Today from the global lane, deep fake crime and AI superintelligent evil unleashed.
AI has removed the human bottleneck from scams, from cybercrime, and from other types of, illicit activity.
This foundation is being locked in, and we're not going to stop it.
The one big beautiful bill, budget boondoggle or sound tax policy.
If you're going to cut taxes, great, but you got to make sure that you cut spending more. This is continuing to rack up the tab that's ultimately going to be borne by future generations that can't yet even defend themselves at the ballot box.
Flag of our fathers and honoring our dads. Why we celebrate.
In fatherhood, we sense the divine, as the scripture writers did, who told us all good things come down from the Father of lights.
70 years of presidential orders federalizing the National Guard. Governor Gavin Newsom on the wrong side of history. And it's all right here on the global lane. Deep fake videos and fake emergency calls. It's becoming increasingly difficult to distinguish between what is real and what is not. As Homeland Security intensifies its efforts to combat migrant-related crimes, we're witnessing the emergence of another wave of criminal activity. This new trend may ultimately present a greater threat to our communities and national security. Dale Hurd shows us how artificial intelligence is being used to commit crimes and how you can fight back.
More and more people are getting scammed online.
Recently, my grandpa just got scammed out of his whole life savings.
Just last week, I spoke to somebody who really got scammed.
My wife got victimized in an internet fraud.
AI-enabled crimes are up 456% since last year. Email phishing attacks, identity theft, ransomware attacks, financial scams, and deepfake child pornography are all becoming more sophisticated and prevalent. Artificial intelligence has become the tool of choice for online criminals because it is erasing the line between the real and the fake. Google's newly announced video generator is about to flood the internet with AI-created clips that have the look of expensive films.
None of us is real. We're here because someone decided to write a prompt. We all hate him for it.
AI can take this. Artificial intelligence will supercharge online criminal activity and turn it into this deepfake of me saying whatever someone programs my image to say, and it doesn't have to be true.
I've never seen anything move faster in my lifetime than AI. Not the internet, not crypto, not anything else. And what we're doing is we're measuring this technology in days.
Former federal prosecutor Ari Redbord is the global head of policy at TRM Labs.
AI has removed the human bottleneck from scams, from cybercrime, and from other types of, illicit activity.
America's adversaries are said to be using AI to influence U.S. politics and to steal.
We've seen North Korea. They just stole $1.5 billion in one day to use for weapons proliferation and other destabilizing activity.
Every major American adversary is experimenting with AI.
Leah Siskin is an AI expert at the Foundation for Defensive Democracies.
At the start, the outbreak of the war between Ukraine and Russia was Russia creating deepfakes of Ukrainian President Zelensky surrendering.
It's not very hard to tell that this is a deepfake because at times the voice and facial movements seem unnatural. However, online criminals are already working to fix these kinds of imperfections, says cybersecurity expert Neil O'Farrell.
So if you're looking for those as a way to tell the difference between deepfake and real, you're probably setting a trap for yourself because the bad guys know those are the giveaways. So they're working very, very hard on fixing those telltales.
How can you protect yourself from these scammers? O'Farrell says if you receive a call from a friend or family member claiming to be in trouble and requesting money or personal information, you need to ask questions.
Where are you? What jurisdiction are you in? Could I speak to an arresting officer? Could you hold the phone up? Turn on the video and let me see. I want you, like proof of life. Show me that it is you and you are where you say you are.
Or choose a unique family code word that's not been sent through the internet and ask a friend or family member to say it.
Dad, I got into some trouble and I need some money. I need you to go buy a $100 Visa gift card and read me the numbers on the back.
Sure. What's the password? Armani?
I'm not continuing this conversation until you give me the code word.
What worries experts is how artificial intelligence learns, and that AI crime is headed toward what's called its mature phase.
Dale Hurd joins us with more. Okay, Dale, what's the AI crime mature phase? Are we already in it?
Well, we're on our way. The mature phase would be when AI crime dominates online crime, as a category. And also when we've essentially, the bad guys have created an autonomous AI criminal that needs very little supervision. It just goes out and starts stealing stuff. And you can imagine that will be a very dangerous phase.
That's almost like bots, or even worse. You mentioned the use of family passwords and other protective measures, which are wise, regardless of whether the fraud is generated by AI or humans. And you also suggested that AI-generated crime may become more sophisticated and better at scamming than humans, making it harder for people to detect. So that's quite worrisome. What implications will this have for our society? Could computers and machines end up draining our bank accounts, stealing our nation's wealth?
Yeah, I mean, I asked the experts, is this going to make the internet useless? Is the internet going to be so full of what they call slop, which are deep fakes, voice clones, scams, that it's like this carnival of ridiculous stuff, and it's useless as a source of information because you can't tell what is real. And so the internet is going to become much more dangerous, much less trustworthy. What if security protocols are breached over and over, and banks are like, that's it, we're going back to paper? What if they can't stop because AI learns, so it learns to overcome obstacles? What if financial institutions can't keep your money safe any longer? I liken this a little bit to, Gary, you and I are young enough to remember when you could ride in a car without a seatbelt. It was, in a way, it was really nice. It was freeing. It was also really dangerous. And the internet is going to become more and more dangerous. We're going to need more seatbelts, and it's going to be less fun. And we're going to have to decide just how much security we're going to put up with to make it safe again.
Okay, Dale Hurd, another excellent enterprising report, Dale. Thanks for sharing those additional insights.
Thank you.
The big, beautiful budget bill, budget-busting boondoggle or sound tax policy for the future. Our next guest has long argued that excessive government spending is a contributing cause of inflation and must be reined in. Texas Tech economics professor Alexander Salter also believes an independent Federal Reserve, one that will not bow to political pressures, is crucial to the nation's economic health. Alexander, I want to get your thoughts on an independent Fed in a moment, but first, let's look at this Trump big, beautiful budget bill. Will it only succeed in the Senate if deeper cuts are made? Good or bad for America? What do you think?
I think some of the trade-offs that Republicans in Congress and the House and the president felt that they had to make with this current version of the bill are pretty unfortunate. Don't get me wrong, I like tax cuts as much as the next guy. I like codifying the tax cuts that we got in 2017, making them permanent. But we also got some tax policies that frankly don't make a whole lot of economic sense. The SALT deduction, that doesn't make a whole lot of economic sense. Exempting tips and overtime, things like that are ultimately going to be more distortionary and actually do forsake needed revenue. I don't think most people understand just how indebted the national government has become. If you're going to cut taxes, great, but you got to make sure that you cut spending more. And this bill does not even come close to that. So this is continuing to rack up the tab that's ultimately going to be borne by future generations that can't yet even defend themselves at the ballot box.
It's going to be hard to make those deeper cuts because people are already complaining about job reductions, some of the proposed DOGE cuts and waste and spending. And of course, as you mentioned, they think those are popular, the no tax on tips and things like that. So how do you do it?
Everyone likes the idea of spending cuts until it's time to cut spending. And then people realize, wait, it might be my preferred program that has to take a haircut. And then everything goes to pieces. The fact of the matter is there's only so much money in discretionary spending. If we're actually going to get the long-term fiscal trajectory of the federal government under control, we need to be more serious about entitlement reform. Unfortunately, the president has made it clear that to him, that's a non-starter. I think the American public need to understand that when the president says that, what he's saying is balancing the budget as a non-starter. So that's yet another broken campaign promise.
And when Chairman Powell met recently with President Trump, he told him the Fed's interest rate decisions are, quote, based solely on careful, objective, and non-political analysis. Is Trump wrong to push the Fed to lower rates? And do you believe the Fed must not bow to political pressures?
So I think in these sorts of discussions, we sometimes conflate two kinds of independence for our central bank. You sometimes hear this idea that political officials, elected officials, should never have anything to do with central banking. And that just can't be true. The Federal Reserve was created by Congress. The Constitution of the United States vests the monetary policy powers in Congress, and Congress chose to delegate those powers to the Fed. Frankly, every president since Eisenhower has tried to informally influence Fed chairs. President Nixon famously, or I should say infamously, persuaded then Fed Chairman Burns to loosen monetary policy on the eve of his reelection. Even President Reagan, who gets credit for the boom of the economic boom of the 1980s, leaned on Paul Volcker in the early days of the Volcker disinflation. So I think that we need to be really careful about this idea of presidents interfering in monetary policy decisions to help their electoral prospects. We should want Congress to be calling the shots. We shouldn't want the president interfering with day-to-day monetary policy decisions.
And Alexander, you wrote recently in the Washington Examiner that the Fed can help Uncle Sam pay its bills, or it can promote economic stability. It cannot do both. You end the article saying you're increasingly skeptical of the Fed making the right choice. Why is that?
Yeah, that's right. It's simply true that the Fed, if it wants to, can print up a whole bunch of money and buy government bonds, thereby lowering government borrowing costs, at least in the short run. And the Fed has done that. Many times throughout history, it's done that, most recently during the economic fallout from the COVID pandemic. From 20 to 22, the size of the balance sheet almost doubled. The Federal Reserve purchased trillions of dollars of new government bonds because, in part, they were concerned with the integrity of the market for government debt, the market for Treasury securities. That's a very important market, and I can partly understand why monetary policymakers are concerned to keep functionings there smooth. But the fact of the matter remains that so long as they're concerned with helping Uncle Sam borrow, we're ultimately going to lose control over the dollar's purchasing power, because the inevitable result of that is inflation, as we saw starting in summer 2022 when consumer price inflation reached almost 10%. And so I think that the Fed should be concerned with maintaining full employment and stable prices and not help Uncle Sam pay its bills. Fiscal policymakers should stick to fiscal policy. Monetary policymakers should stick to monetary policy. If you cross that bridge, the only predictable result is going to be crippling dollar depreciation.
Okay, we'll know in a few days if the Fed decides to lower interest rates. Young Voices contributor, economics professor Alexander Salter, thank you for taking the time to share your insights. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Gary.
Flag Day and Father's Day, they're two back-to-back holidays this year, always celebrated here in the U.S. in the month of June. But why do Americans set aside these special days? What's the backstory? Well, joining us to explain is historian and author William Federer. Bill, let's begin with Flag Day, which this year is also the 250th anniversary of the birth of the U.S. Army. And tell us more.
Well, Flag Day was actually June 14th, 1777. And that was when 13 Stars and 13 Stripes was adopted by the Second Continental Congress as the U.S. flag. And it was taken around the world. And it was in 1916 that Woodrow Wilson designated June 14th as National Flag Day. And then it was in 1954 that Eisenhower on June 14th put "Under God" into the Pledge of Allegiance. And so it's just a fascinating story. And so this is important for us to remember, that unity is important for any nation to be a nation. And it is where you can come underneath a one flag. I love the speech by Warren G. Harding talking about when Marcus Whitman went up to Oregon. And then afterwards, the United States claimed it as a territory and as a state. And he said there's no better example of the flag of the Union following the cross of Christianity. So it was first the missionaries that went there, and then the flag of the country. And then Eisenhower said that any patriotic group can well take the flag in one hand and the Bible in the other and march ahead. So they saw no problem with the Bible and the flag, but it was us being unified as a nation. And then, of course, the big picture is the most common form of government in world history is kings. And the king is a glorified gang leader. And they keep getting bigger because with the latest military advancements, the kings can kill more people. And when America's founders broke away from the King of England, they set up a republic where the citizen is the king. So the word citizen is Greek. It means co-king. So when we pledge allegiance to the flag and to the republic, we're basically pledging allegiance to us being in charge of ourselves. And so when somebody protests the flag, what they're saying is, I don't want to be the king anymore. I protest this system where I participate in ruling myself. It's like, okay, somebody else will tell you what to do. And so America's founders basically flipped the script. Instead of top-down, ruled by kings and pharaohs and Caesars and Kaisers and Khans, it's bottom-up, ruled by we the people. And so we celebrate this republic. We pledge allegiance to the flag. And it is important for us to remember that we're honoring the sacrifices of those that went before us because we care about those that are going to come after us. There's a phrase that says those that don't care about their ancestors won't care about their posterity.
Well, we care about our fathers, Bill, and Father's Day, it seems, doesn't quite get the same recognition as Mother's Day. It was started after Mother's Day by a woman who wanted to honor her Civil War veteran father. So tell us about the origins of Father's Day.
Right. So Anna Jarvis, Mother's Day, inspired Sonora Louise Smart Dodd. Sort of a long name, but Sonora wanted to honor her father, as you mentioned, William Jackson Smart, who had been a Civil War veteran, and then he raised 6 children by himself after his wife died in childbirth. And so Sonora Louise Smart Dodd went to the YMCA in Spokane, Washington. And on June 19th, 1910, the YMCA sponsored the first Father's Day. And of course, the YMCA was started out of a revival. Charles Finney's preaching in the Second Great Awakening inspired George Williams over in London. And instead of young men going to bars and brothels, he said, let's have a place where they can have Bible study and prayer and exercise. And it went global. And so the YMCA spread. And so the greater YMCA association took it national. And so they spread it through their YMCAs. And then in 1916, Woodrow Wilson spoke in Spokane at the Father's Day event. Teddy Roosevelt addressed Congress regarding the importance of fathers. The statistics are that those without a father are 5 times more likely to live in poverty, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, 20 times more likely to go to prison and alcohol abuse and so forth. But it was Richard Nixon in 1972 that established Father's Day as a permanent national observance. He said to this, to have a father, to be a father is to come very near the heart of life itself. In fatherhood, we know the elemental magic and joy of humanity. In fatherhood, we sense the divine, as the scripture writers did, who told us all good things come down from the Father of lights, in whom there's no variables, neither shadow of turning, James 1:17. Symbolism so challenging to each man who would give his own son or daughter a life of light without shadow.
Okay, we love our fathers. Some interesting historical insights from historian William Federer. Thank you, Bill, for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Governor Gavin Newsom and the state of California filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration this week, claiming the president committed an illegal act by violating their state's sovereignty. Newsom claims Trump misused his authority by unlawfully mobilizing National Guard troops in response to the anti-ICE riots in Los Angeles. Some of the same voices that supported previous presidents for calling up the Guard to enforce federal law against those resisting desegregation during the civil rights era, are now criticizing this president for enforcing federal immigration law and arresting those who obstruct ICE agents in their duties. Governor Newsom and his supporters could benefit from a brief history lesson. Here are a few notable examples. In 1957, Republican President Dwight Eisenhower federalized the Arkansas National Guard in response to the segregationist actions of Governor Orville Faubus and deployed the 101st Airborne Division to ensure the integration of Little Rock Central High School. In 1962, in the face of opposition from Governor Ross Barnett, Democratic President John F. Kennedy federalized the Mississippi National Guard after riots erupted over the enrollment of African-American James Meredith at the University of Mississippi. JFK took similar action the following year when Governor George Wallace blockaded the entrance to the University of Alabama, preventing 2 black students from enrolling. Years later, Wallace acknowledged that his actions had been wrong. If you grew up in Michigan like I did, you may remember the Detroit riots of 1967, during which another Democratic president, Lyndon B. Johnson, federalized the Michigan National Guard and deployed active duty troops to restore order after 5 days of violence. Johnson took similar measures the following year when riots broke out in urban areas across the country following the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. The last time National Guard troops were federalized in Los Angeles was under Republican President George H.W. Bush in 1992, after riots erupted following the acquittal of police officers in the beating of Rodney King. So what has changed? Why was it acceptable for past presidents to take such actions, but not now? When local officials are lax in their response to protect the safety of their citizens and uphold the rule of law, the federal government must step in. A growing number of Americans, 56%, now support Trump's strict immigration and deportation policies. Support is likely to increase as a result of the president's strong response to the unrest in Los Angeles. And like Governors Faubus, Wallace, and Barnett before him, Governor Gavin Newsom may soon find himself on the wrong side of history. Well, that's it today from the Global Lane. Until next time, be blessed.